Like, why are you spending so much money on decorating your cathedral with all these beautiful objects when you could have spent all of that on helping the poor and giving them food and clothing? Why aren't you doing that?
The argument there, it's not a good argument to say it could be used for something better, because there's always something better that money can be used for, right? Like even for good things, right? You donate to a charity, there's probably a better charity that you could donate to, right? Maybe that one's not as effective, right? So like there's always going to be a hierarchy of that. The argument shouldn't be that there's something else that you could assign those resources to. The argument should be that the one that you assigned them to is just ontologically not worthy of assigning those resources, right? But I think that's a lot harder of an argument to make. So the simpler sophistry argument to make is just to say, oh, see, but this is bad because you could be giving that to the poor.
Welcome to the Circle Dwellers podcast, a production of the Protestant monastic order of Life Mission Fellowship. This is a show about living out the gospel in an intentional Christian community. My name is Matt Krell. I'm here with my brother and co-host, Timothy Krell.
Hey, Matt.
Hey. So, Tim, don't you ever feel like a little bit of you dies inside when you see a strip mall church or a Pizza Hut turned into a church? I know, like, I kind of feel that inside. Like, I get it. I understand people have money, and there's, you make do with what you can, and God calls you to certain places and all that. I'm not saying anything's wrong on that front. I'm just saying that something feels wrong when I see a Pizza Hut turn into a church. There's just something feels off about that.
Yeah, well, it's like it's sort of the inverse of in town there's the old Catholic church.
Yes. Yeah, it got desacralized a couple years ago.
Now it is now the cathedral spelled with a K.
Yeah.
It still feels. I mean, I know they deconsecrated everything, but
it just feels wrong.
It still feels so terrible and wrong. Like, I don't want to ever go in there.
Yeah.
But it's like the inverse. You get the same kind of feeling of like, oh, we're making a church, but putting it in the middle of the Pizza Hut or whatever. I do think like there's definitely there's something. I'll say like there's something beautiful when Christians come together and make do with what they have to come together and worship, and that is neat, but you definitely get the sense that that's not a priority, even after the necessity that brought them to, be in a less than ideal location maybe for worshiping comes about. They're still don't prioritize that at all. And we'll talk about why, I suppose. But I remember hearing like when we were down at the Symbolic World Conference, someone was talking in one of the lectures about how with their churches, when there's a new Orthodox church, sometimes they will be in quite, it'll be in a strip mall or something like that, because they're just getting started and they don't have the resources or the attendance or whatever to do something more beautiful. But it's like a very high priority for them to get the church to be something that is beautiful in the traditional structures of what an Orthodox church is supposed to be. And so like that, they raise money and like that is their focus. Is they're like, okay, we're in this situation. It's sort of ugly and not ideal, but we're not going to stay here. The goal is to grow so that we can put everything in its proper place,
Yeah. And, the problem with the many Protestants, though, is that either doesn't seem to happen. They're just kind of contented staying where they are. Or when they go off and actually build that church, it's all boring white inside, it's just white, maybe a couple nice drapes or something. And it's just disappointing and very clinical and just soul crushing to me. So what's going on? Well, yeah. What we wanted to do is kind of express our thoughts on this phenomenon of boring churches and why we tend to lean more Orthodox and even Catholic in our sensibilities with decoration and such, despite the fact that we are Protestants, as I said at the beginning here. Like, we're Protestants and we're monastics, which is definitely a weird combo for sure. But we actually tend to lean more towards a Anglican perspective in many things, and that kind of results in us deeply admiring the Orthodox and the mainline Catholic Church. And this is one of those things where we got one of the things we love doing is touring actual Catholic churches throughout Europe and even America and such. We have lots of decoration and such, and we deeply, deeply admire that. And we even recently, some of our people have been painting the Last Judgment inside our sanctuary up on the. Well, it's not exactly the roof. It's this weird segments where, the wall meets the roof, whatever. But in this area of our sanctuary, we've been painting Last Judgment because we really care about beautifying our sacred spaces. And we have artwork on the walls and our dining area in the sanctuary as well. So yeah, we're really big about decorating things, making things beautiful. And part of the reason why we do this is that beauty is often the only way you can reach people with the gospel, or at least the first way to reach people with the gospel. Because when you try to tell people the truth, like you preach to them directly, sometimes that works if they are in a certain state to be receptive to that, but often doesn't, because they have their priors, they have their biases against the faith for whatever reason, and so they reject it. Sometimes people don't even necessarily accept goodness, like charity, at the start, because people can do charity or be kind for manipulative reasons, right? So the people are on guard against that. But what people are rarely on guard against is beauty, because beauty is undeniable. You can see it and you recognize it and you understand that it is valuable, and it doesn't need to explain itself. And so many people have noticed that often beauty is the first step in leading people to Christ, because their defenses are down. And after all, God is the good, the true, and the beautiful. So promoting beauty in your sacred spaces or everything you do is leading people towards God, whether they understand it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Although it's even more powerful, beauty's role in that, in modern sensibilities and in art, beauty is considered like trite and not true art anymore. Like, if you want to do real art, you probably should do something ugly, not something beautiful. So beauty is definitely under attack. Sir Roger Scruton has that amazing documentary series that he does on beauty that kind of explores that too. That's really worth watching and thinking on. But so beauty serves in that role that you're saying, but it's like, I think it's even all the more now, because beauty is so looked down upon, and the ugly is so often celebrated now.
There's this interesting article I read a couple years ago in First Things about sentimentality, and he's a poet, and I think he works at some university somewhere. He has students who and teaches them how to write poetry. Well, the first thing he tells them not to do is, one, you're not allowed to talk about grandma's praying hands, and secondly, you're not allowed to talk about piss. Because being gritty and edgy is actually the same thing as talking about grandma's praying hands. It's sentimentality, just in a different mode.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's very tough. I mean, you see it in a lot of TV shows now too. Like they have to be like really dark and gritty and depressing, and then you kind of want to just end it all after you watch them and stuff. But and like I've watched some of those shows or started some of those shows, and like there's a certain appeal that starts where it has the veneer of being meaningful, and so it's like, wow, that's so gritty and realistic and stuff that I must, this must be high art, but they're just chasing that. It's just sentimentality, like you're saying. The just that vibe of the dark and depressing and the nihilistic, and that really isn't. There's no there. You keep going through, and they just hit that note over and over and over again, and there's no true meaning or exploration of truth that really comes out of it. It's all just about having that veneer of being pseudo meaningful because it's it makes you feel depressed or something. I
know this wasn't like what we were going to talk about today on the podcast, but you sent me a while back an interesting video on fantasy and how the industry is basically completely screwed up. But people were pointing out that most of the fantasy genre is just following this formula that's been extracted out of Tolkien. And then George R. R. Martin is just reacting to that formula by doing the exact opposite. But now people are getting fed up with George R. R. Martin stuff, so now they're kind of going back to the old formula. And so, but there's no innovation here. There's no meaning here. It's just rehashing the same thing over and over again. And it reminds me of that same point. It's like you're just being edgy for edginess sake. And no, being edgy doesn't make it meaningful. Anyway, what does this have to do with beautiful churches? Our point is that beauty is actually worth something, and it has an effect on you, and a very positive and good effect on you. And it can even be used like an evangelism tool as well. There's lots of people who've, if you read their testimonies, they went into a European cathedral at one point, and they were so overwhelmed by the beauty and this sacrality. That's not a word. You know what I am attempting to say here. The sacredness. That is the word I'm looking for. My brain was doing something weird there. Anyway, the sacredness of the space. And it affected them deeply. And that's what started their journey to becoming a Christian, because they encountered this thing that from outside the universe. And that thing was beauty. So, yeah.
I remember it was interesting hearing Andrew Clavin talk about why he likes ghost stories, but essentially one of the things he likes about them is the numinous aspect of it, where it suggests that there is a spiritual world and there's meaning outside of just the materialism and all of that. But you just talking now is making me think that there's a flip side of that. That's what true beauty does. Is it also and perhaps even more powerfully, because it when you encounter the truly beautiful, it points to a reality outside of you and a transcendence and an ultimate good that is spiritual and makes it much harder to, if you're gonna encounter something truly awe-inspiring, beautiful, especially like in churches or different things, you have to work pretty hard to convince yourself that all that's going on here is just like my lizard brain has evolved in a certain way that these kind of structures and things appeal to it, because I don't know why that. I don't know why it would evolve that way. Why you know, but it has, and you know, and it's just, you know, those neurons firing that are just giving me some kind of dopamine increase, and it means absolutely nothing. It's very hard to really truly believe that.
Mm-hmm. But there are opponents of beautiful churches and lots of ornamentation and decoration, especially within Protestant circles. So we kind of wanted to address some of these criticisms briefly, because we have certainly heard them before. And so criticism number one, that money could have been used to feed the poor or some other charity. Like, why are you spending so much money on decorating your cathedral with all these beautiful objects when you could have spent all of that on helping the poor and giving them food and clothing? Why aren't you doing that?
Yeah, well, that is an argument that on the surface is very like, there's a certain amount of sophistry in it, but it's like when you think about it, it's it falls into a category of philosophical discussions that have, you know, haunted many a philosopher for many years, because it's like, you know, you're saying this, do this good thing, right, which is spend the money on something different, and the question is like, where does that stop? You know, like you could have, you spend, there's so much money in your life that you spend that you don't strictly need, right? You don't need a coffee today, you don't need a certain something, you could probably get by without it, and there's probably even days where you have, right? So why don't you take that money that you spent on that, don't do it, and then give that to the poor, right? And it can go pretty far. It's kind of hard to see where is it reasonable to draw that line. But
hey,
that argument,
I give to the poor. You know, I mean, I sure I
yeah.
go Starbucks coffee, but I donate money. So I'm a good person because, so you can justify buying the coffee.
But it's like the difficulty comes. It's not yeah, like the argument there. It's not a good argument to say it could be used for something better, because there's always something better that money can be used for, right? Like even for good things, right? Like, if you spend money on, something like, you donate to a charity, there's probably a better charity that you could donate to, right? Maybe that one's not as effective, right? So like there's always going to be a hierarchy of that. So like that can't be enough of a reason. It like really, and I feel like when people make that argument, the real argument would be building the church isn't a good. It's not enough to say an argument is that there's something that it could be used on instead. Obviously, right? Anytime you assign resources to something, there's always something maybe better that you could have assigned those resources to, right? The argument shouldn't be that there's something else that you could assign those resources to. The argument should be that the one that you assigned them to is just ontologically not worthy of assigning those resources, right? So, but I think that's a lot harder of an argument to make. So the simpler sophistry argument to make is just to say, oh, see, but this is bad because you could be giving that to the poor or something, right?
And just to put a little bit more of a biblical spin on it, I think that's what Judas was saying when Mary broke the alabaster glass. So
yeah,
anyway,
I mean,
that's
a great example, right, in the Bible when she raised it and they say, oh yeah, couldn't have this been sold and given to the poor? So not only that, like we literally, I mean, that's a very concrete example in the Bible of this principle that the poor you have with you always, and another one is, right, that man does not live by bread alone as well.
Yep.
So, and this goes back to the idea of like, is spending that money on making a beautiful church worthy of the investment of those resources? If you are fundamentally a materialist, which a lot of Christians will fall into that. Like in other words, if you're going to fall into the camp of saying the church isn't worthy of spending your resources on, I think ultimately what that ends up coming down to is you're kind of giving into the materialist worldview, because you're saying, really what matters most is, that these pressing immediate physical needs are met somewhere else, and nothing else is as important as getting food in the belly, or some other very, very pragmatic kind of materialistic concern. Obviously those are important concerns, but is that enough? It's not enough. Man doesn't just need food, he needs spiritual food as well. And one of the ways that you find that spiritual food is it's not just in, oh, I'm thinking the correct spiritual thoughts. It's in the structures of reality around us. And one of those is the buildings that we're in a place where we worship, and setting that aside and making it sacred for that. So if you buy into a materialist worldview, yes, that is a waste of resources. But if you believe that there's spiritual transcendence, that there is a whole nother aspect to our existence and meaning in the world besides just the physical, then it makes absolutely a lot of sense to pour a lot of resources into making something sacred and making the place where you worship God sacred and beautiful.
Yeah, and even to talk a little more about history, like the fact that all these great European towns centered around cathedrals that took centuries to build, right? Nobody does that unless they would see that building of the cathedral as an act of worship to God. It makes no sense otherwise. So, yeah, this is too simplistic to simply say that you could have spent that on the poor. Yeah, no, humans are more complicated than that, and we need more things than just food in our bellies. All right, so that's objection number one. Objection number two, but beautiful churches are a distraction or idolatry. So putting all the artwork up there, you should be focusing on the word, and you don't want to distract your audience, and you don't want them worshiping the building itself.
Yeah. So why don't you dive into why you think that is?
I mean, I don't know about your internal experience, but that never happens to me. Sorry, no. But when I go into a beautiful European Gothic cathedral, I am overwhelmed by the presence of God that is being expressed in the building. I am not worshiping the building itself. Maybe that happens for some people, but honestly, I have not experienced that myself, and I have a hard time believing that is most people's experience. So, yeah, that doesn't seem like a good argument.
I mean, it also seems like, yeah. Does anyone who really, the world is filled with strawmen. Like
yes.
Does anyone who is really advocates for this idea, right, that this is important, do they think they're worshiping the building? Like, is that? I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone, intelligent who actually thinks that, who is able to argue that well. Now, does that mean that nobody does that? No, like, of course that's a possibility, but it's a strange argument to say just because some people do that and they're doing the wrong, just because someone is doing the wrong thing doesn't necessarily mean that the thing that advocates for the right thing is incorrect, right? Just because they try to follow the right thing, maybe, or in there, and then they end up doing the thing they're not supposed to do, which is worship the building. It doesn't follow that therefore now this enterprise is bad. No, maybe just those people are doing it wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think really what that objection boils down to is the kind of Protestant iconoclasm some of that anti-papist perspective that you sometimes get. And God bless our brothers and sisters in Christ here, but I don't know. It's been a long time since the Reformation. Maybe we can chill out a little bit. That's my attitude on this. Okay. Look, there's problems everywhere. They are legion. We could discuss all these important differences between the different churches and whatever, but can we just at least say that maybe decorating our churches isn't a bad thing here? I don't know. That seems like some common ground that we can get on. It doesn't have to, we don't have to go on.
I mean, I get the sense too. I mean, there's definitely, you can find all sorts of opinions, and there's definitely opinions where they're intentional about not having, not decorating the church. But I feel like there's a huge swath where just nobody's thinking about it. It's just they haven't spent a lot of time, thinking of whether it's just not something that's in their worldview, that's actually something important. That's an aspect of God. That's an aspect of Christianity, and not just an aspect, like an important fundamental idea. So I think a lot of people would they'd be like, oh, sure, that's fine, yeah, big, beautiful, but they don't understand. No, that should be a priority. That there's a spiritual significance and importance. That this should be, something highly prioritized with us, rather than just something novel or interesting, or when you have the time. But I don't totally have a good sense of it, but my guess and my feeling is the majority isn't they're opposed to doing it. It's just they don't think it's important.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. The extremists you see on X, Twitter, do not represent the majority. They are not representative. No. The reason I pull this up is because I've actually seen those arguments. Different.
Have you really?
Yes, I have. I will not name names, but yes, it's dumb. Oh, wow. I'm sorry.
Next time
the Protestant Reformation was, a long, long time ago, people. We can start being nice to each other now, okay? So, anyway, but to just wrap this up, if you would like to get started on this, we love talking about art, as you can probably guess from our previous episodes on this podcast. But to get started, if you really want to start, I'm going to have some beautiful artwork in our church and something that really lifts us, our eyes up towards God and really enriches us and our souls. Well, a great place to get started, we would say, is to go for pre-Raphaelite art. I really love that. And main reason I like pre-Raphaelites is because that was an era where they were very, very positive about Christendom and the Middle Ages. So you can get lots of really pretty religious art from them. And it is realist. It's gorgeous. I can't say enough good things about it. Heck, I actually have a pre-Raphaelite up on my wall. You can't see it here, but it's really nice. It's the Accolade by Edmund Blair Lytton. You can go look it up. It's a really nice chivalric one. And I don't know if that would be appropriate for church, but whatever. The point is, it's a good movement. So there's that. But we would just say pretty much anything classical art. Please do not put modern art in your sanctuary. I am begging you. Everyone seems to be doing that. No, don't get any modern artists. Sorry. No, get realists. Realists are cool. Realists are great. The realists know what they're doing and they know what they're talking about. Okay. I'm off my little soapbox here.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before, but in our sanctuary and our dining room as well, we have lots of classical art hanging up, and then we also have a practice of through the different seasons in the year, we have different Christian art hanging prominent place in the sanctuary, so it gives you something else to meditate on during the Christian seasons. But I mean, that's just a small start of one way that you can do is to start bringing Christian art, like real art. We're not talking about like modern kitsch or something. You know,
Yeah, please no. Please
a
no.
picture of
If it has
the one
18
set of feet walking through the sand, and you know, and
the creation date has to
poem
have
at the bottom, you know,
8.
and like, yeah, but like the real Christian art, you know.
It's got to be before 1800. Okay, they're about like
Yeah,
before
I mean,
1900.
you
Okay,
find stuff after that, you know,
The-
even in modern day, there's
yes,
some
okay.
good
There's
art,
good modern. I
but
don't
yeah.
trust the
But if
audience
you
here.
just
I'm
go in
sorry. I don't.
you know, the stuff from the old time has kind of filtered out. You know, whatever was kitsch back then has been long forgotten. So most of the stuff that you'll find, it tends to be better. So yeah, that's a great way to start.
Oh, you know, I should just mention one more artist because it would be good. James Tissot is a really good guy because he did a lot. He went to the Middle East. This was again during that pre-Raphaelite era. I don't think he counts as a pre-Raphaelite for whatever reason, but either way, he went to the Middle East and he did a ton of paintings of the Middle East. So he has tons of pictures of the life of Christ on there, and they're very beautiful. Lots of like individual scenes of the scriptures.
That's right.
Yeah,
He's got quite a few illustrations of the biblical narrative. And then, I mean, if we're going to mention artists, we got to mention William Bouguereau too.
Bouguereau, of course, Bouguereau, yes,
artwork as well. So that's another good one to look up for sure. And I mean, you can get prints of all these for they're not very expensive.
No, they really aren't. They really aren't. Anyway, so hopefully that's inspired you about what you can do. Anyway, if you like this episode, please like it. Hit the subscribe button. Leave us a comment. YouTube seems to like anything when people do stuff. So we really love it when people talk to us. And yeah, we're happy to answer any questions you had about what we do or any more suggestions. We're always open to talk about that. And of course, if you're listening to this on Spotify or some other podcast platform, please give us a 5-star rating. That'd be fantastic. And I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you for your attention, everyone, and have a blessed day.